Welcome to everyone. It's a very large group, for us at least. It's a powerful energy field already. Can any of you feel the energy, vibration? We're already building up a very nice field for transformation and realization. Teaching this weekend will be a very difficult technical task because some of you are only here for the weekend, and among those, some are beginners, some are more advanced in experience with meditation. Some have come from different traditions of backgrounds. Some of you are here for 10 days, and there's more time to develop theory. Some are here for a month, some are here for several months, or many months, maybe indefinite, and some live here permanently and have been here for many years. And so I want everyone to get some benefit of learning something new without leaving anyone behind. So we'll try to find some way of transmitting what is necessary at an energetic level as well as a conceptual one, so that everyone reaches the goal that you may have, or that the Supreme Intelligence may have for you to be reached and broken through this weekend. Those of you who are here only for the weekend, especially, please do not feel at all hesitant to ask questions when the floor is open. Don't be shy. Make sure you get all your questions answered before you leave. Spell. You don't lose your mind entirely in this game. Okay, I wrote a lot so I don't have to get up and down a lot of times. We are calling this weekend a contemplation weekend. That's not really a gimmick, although it might seem like one. Contemplation is the traditional word for that ultimate state of meditation, at least in the Western Christian tradition, that state in which one goes beyond simply meditating on God or on the supreme reality or the ultimate truth in a dualistic subject-object manner. It is being absorbed into the object of meditation, and the object of meditation being nothing less than the ultimate reality. Now, in the East, it's clear that the ultimate reality is not an other to begin with. In the West, they start out with the idea that God is wholly other, and therefore one has to get to know this being, this supreme being, that is so qualitatively different from what you think you are, that there has to be some major effort that goes beyond whatever you can imagine or conceive in order to be able to reach some kind of attunement or resonance with God. But in the East, that's not the case. In the East, the goal is to reach your authentic self, simply that. And the beginning stage of meditation arises simply because you have been in ignorance of that. And the result of being in ignorance of who you really are, meaning you're living in and with and through an inauthentic self, a false self, that was installed in you in childhood, which we tend to call the ego, because you have lived in a false self that has not been properly attuned to reality as it truly is, your thoughts and your behavior have been inaccurate, and that has led to suffering, right? This is karma. And so if we want to be done with suffering and lead a life that is free of karma and not fall into the same traps that the ego would tend to cause us to fall into again and again, then we want to exit from the false self and from all traces of identification with it and discover and abide in and as the real self. And that real self is none other than God or the Buddha nature or the Tao or emptiness or the plenum, the fullness. There you can choose any number of words, and all the different traditions of East and West have their own final term for ultimate reality, and it doesn't matter. They all refer to the same. So therefore we are not adhering to any particular spiritual tradition. But because we are living in a postmodern age where many, if not most or all of us, have grown up with a secular education, the new religion for many years has been science. And therefore, people trust scientific data and theories much more than they trust spiritual or religious dogmas or creeds or theoretical models of reality. So for that reason, it is useful to at least indicate to whatever extent is necessary to remove resistances, the fact that quantum physics, which is like the most avant-garde, and there are many levels and interpretations of quantum physics, but to take it at its most current form is totally congruent with the old traditions of spirituality, both East and West, if we take the Western traditions at their esoteric level: mystical Christianity, Kabbalistic Judaism, Sufism, and the Shiite mystical traditions, rather than the external, exoteric, Sunday school versions of those religions. If we understand the teachings, they are universal, and they are congruent with those other kinds of approaches that were underground and had to be underground during times of persecution, like alchemy and Freemasonry and various other forms and approaches to spiritual transformation that flourished and became degraded, as have all the various religions. So for those of you who are, for whom it is important to know that what we are doing is scientifically valid, and I think for many people that is the case, and that there is something to be learned from the insights of contemporary science, and from the, let's say, those aspects of science that are not allowed to be made public, okay? I don't know how much people are aware of it, but we live in a time of not only massive overloads of information, but massive amounts of disinformation. And that is particularly true when it comes to science. And most true when it comes to physics, because the realm of nuclear physics in particular is, as we all know, weaponizable. And anything that can be turned into weapons is going to be classified information and not made part of the public education for people who are wanting to study those subjects, even to the PhD level. So understanding that also, and the censoring of the development of sciences, of certain sciences, in particular that relate to consciousness, because of the weaponizability of the use of consciousness for many different reasons, including mind control, etc. Remote viewing, remote control of apparatuses, and various other uses of consciousness that are not part of a spiritual tradition, but nonetheless are being developed, not for the purpose of transcending the ego, but for purposes of ego mastery over other egos, which is not something I advise, but it is happening, and it's creating a lot of karma of its own, as we know. Because of that, also, there is a lot of information to be gained that is actually useful to yogis who want to develop their intelligence and their capacities for mastery over consciousness. That I think it's important that we do make use of, and that we not censor that information once we can glean it accurately in terms of what has been left out of the let's say, the publicly admissible paradigms of science that are not complete and not accurate. And to the extent that we can fill in those gaps and then apply them in a spiritual context to the transformation of our own consciousness, then it will serve to accelerate our own internal development and our capacity to create an energy field that is sustainable and that can help in the restoration of planetary existence. So it's with that in mind that the understanding of using the information of quantum physics, which also includes that of electromagnetism and understanding of complexity theory and chaos theory, nonlinear dynamics in general, and various other related disciplines, can help us to increase our understanding at an ever more subtle level of what has to happen internally in order to attain the highest level of realization and sustain it. So I want to be clear that for this weekend, one of the balances that I will try to keep in an accurate way is that between theory and practice. And this is always a very difficult balancing act, because the theory, the more we have an accurate paradigm of what we are doing and why we're doing it and who we are who are doing it, then the more successful our practice will be. But the practice is what's important, not the theory, and you can get there without any of this theory as well. But a Western-oriented intelligence that has been brought up in that kind of a secular scientistic worldview may find it more easy to get beyond their own questions and resistances to phobias to the God word or its equivalents, and be able to feel more comfortable in those spaces that we may have to describe using terms like light and Shakti, energy, and power. But this is about power. There's no way around that. We're talking about mastery over the illusion that is the phenomenal plane. And so there is an ethical constraint and component to that. But this is something that we have to come to terms with, which is why there's a dharma, and why there is an ethical superstructure that goes along with this development to make sure that one is able to safely use the powers that may be granted through the meditative process of transcendence of the ego, and not allow whatever traces of ego are left to appropriate for its purposes those energies, because that would lead to more karma, more suffering, and would vitiate the gains that would otherwise be made from the process. And I don't expect people to be all that familiar with the terms of quantum physics, but the general use of that construct, I think, will help us at certain points along the way. But again, because we only have this weekend as an event, I don't want to get bogged down in theory and not have time to do the practice. So that's the first note, is that we're going to be combining these two. Secondly, this is a wisdom school, and the wisdom school is organized according to the let's say, the medieval and ancient Western ideas of the university, which were based on the concept of trivium and quadrivium. Trivium, the three ways, the three viyas, they're not trivial, as that word has come to mean, but it is the foundations of the more advanced knowledge. And the first step of our trivium is translation. Translation means we are going through a paradigm shift. We are shifting our frame of reference. And it's very important to recognize that the world is information. You're always receiving information. You're receiving it now from me verbally, as well as there's energetic information in the field, but we're always getting massive amounts of information and processing it. Some of it is processed at a conscious level, most is processed at a subconscious, some at a superconscious level, but we are basically entities who process information and turn it into energy and use the creative intelligence based on the data of that information to produce outputs of creativity in our lives. So the more that we can have an accurate frame of reference to put that information in, the more that it becomes usable and digestible, assimilable, and appropriately available for the use of eliminating whatever unhappiness pervades our life, right? Because that's one of the first things we want to achieve, is we want a mind at peace, we want to feel happy about our lives, we want to have a sense of mastery over our minds, a feeling of willpower to accomplish our goals, and a sense that there are no internal obstacles or demons that are going to interfere. If there are, they have to be slain, they have to be released. We're not talking about demons now in a literal sense, but let's say thought forms that we contain in our subconscious that may sabotage our intentions. And because we are multiple layered beings with different levels of consciousness that are not always in communication with each other, we may have a certainty about our situation and our goal at one level, and a very opposite model of what the ego wants to achieve at another level. And if those are in conflict, then we're going to find a deadlock in our lives and a paralysis, and perhaps that will turn into a symptom in our bodies of some kind of sickness, or a mental issue, or an emotional one, or combination of those, or a karmic, not a glitch in the matrix in which something negative happens that may be a sign that we should pay attention to something, etc. Right? All of this information is rational. Nothing is random. Everything is important. But you can overinterpret and you can inaccurately interpret. So one of the goals of Sat Yoga is to know, how do you interpret accurately your experience, particularly the synchronicities and the signs of things that were unintended consequences of courses of action. Okay? So it's a very subtle science, and that's why this wisdom school requires a long period of learning, because there's a huge amount to learn in terms of the explicate order of reality, to use the term of David Bohm, a quantum physicist. And I think let's start with Bohmian mechanics as one of the, I think, important paradigm shifts that we need to make if we are going to be able to understand how to navigate through reality in a more effective way than we have been in our lives so far. According to Bohm, we live in a phenomenal plane that we